Good Monday afternoon to you. 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you had a great weekend. A little later in the show, Sam Amico from hoopswire.com will be along. We will talk about the Cavaliers trying to wrap up that fourth spot in the Eastern Conference and home court advantage in the first round of the playoff that comes with it. Cavs really close to doing that. But we begin by talking Browns. We're starting to get an idea of some of the position groups, at least, that the Browns are looking at in the upcoming draft. Word coming out that the Browns will meet with Trenton Simpson, a linebacker from Clemson, as one of their 30 pre-draft visits that they are allowed to do. So Trenton Simpson, linebacker, Clemson, on Andrew Berry and the Browns' radar relative to the draft. Let's welcome in Tyler Johnson from the Faithful Dawgs podcast as well as Network 216. So Tyler, it's not a surprise. A young linebacker kind of fits the defense the Browns are going to be playing under Jim Schwartz. Not a surprise that they'd be looking that way.
Yeah, Dave. Trenton Simpson, he is 6'3", 240 pounds, had 41 solo tackles this year, 2.5 sacks for Clemson. Very athletic linebacker. He's tested very well at the NFL Combine. I'm not surprised at all, like you said, the Browns have interest in him. I think it's a situation, though, with him to be available for the Browns, they are going to have to make a trade up and hope he is there in the middle of the second round, similar to what happened with Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah a few years back, because as of right now, he is projected as a late first, potentially second round pick, 4.4 speed, exactly what you want at the position. He is very similar as far as the mold to Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, who the Browns already have on the roster. They could go a number of different ways at linebacker, but Trenton Simpson's a guy that I'm not shocked they have interest in. Again, I think he's going to have to be a trade-up candidate if they are able to get him, because a lot of mocks, too, have him going to the Bills at the end of the first round.
Yeah, and it's a situation where you'd probably have to pair your threes to move up, but you want to make sure if that presents itself, Andrew Berry's making sure, okay, am I comfortable with this guy? And that's the same thing they did with Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And again, you need to add linebackers. You brought back Anthony Walker. You re-signed Sione Takitaki. So you brought back two guys that are already familiar with the Browns and players the Browns have on defense, but both are coming off pretty severe injuries. We don't know if Sione Takitaki is even going to be healthy to start the year. Same with Anthony Walker. We think Walker's closer than Takitaki. But even so, I think the Browns need to at least add one or two more linebackers this offseason. That way you just have depth at the position, and Jim Schwartz needs linebackers still, and I think they're going to fill that out through the draft and maybe even a veteran in free agency still.
All right, when we think of this season, obviously Deshaun Watson is going to be an important thing. Why do you think he will? Do you think he will bounce back? And if you do, why do you think he will?
Yeah, I do think Deshaun Watson's going to bounce back this year. Again, it was a situation where he had not played for nearly 2 years. And I think playing 6 games, he was going to be rusty. We all should have known that. And I think some of us did know that, but we didn't understand really how rusty he would be. I mean, he's still 58% completion percentage, 1,100 yards, 7 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, a 79 quarterback rating. Obviously, those stats are the worst of his career, but we have to look at the circumstances along with that. And again, he was learning a new offense under Kevin Stefanski, not familiar with a lot of the receivers that he's been working with, tight ends. I mean, yeah, you have some training camp, but he didn't get to practice with the team that much. He's going to get a full offseason with Kevin Stefanski. He's going to get to work with Amari Cooper, new wide receivers, Elijah Moore, Marquise Goodwin, Don Peoples-Jones, David Njoku. And keep in mind, Dave, before this year, Deshaun Watson was a top 10 quarterback in the league statistically. I mean, if you look at his 2020 season with the Texans, a 70% completion percentage, 4,800 yards, 33 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 112 quarterback rating, and his grade on PFF was a 92.5, and just phenomenal football player. And keep in mind, he still nearly had 400 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns. So I would really expect a bounce back from Deshaun Watson. I think, again, we just have to understand the Browns gave him a ton of money, and we wanted him to deliver right away. And a lot of fans had those expectations, but we didn't really understand, I think, the circumstances of this, missing nearly 2 years of football. And anyone who misses 2 years of football, if you're Pat Mahomes, Rodgers, whoever it might be, would have also struggled in a similar situation.
Well, and the other thing that I think we underestimated is first year in a new offense. So he doesn't – one of the things that when he is playing well, it's almost like he gets to the line of scrimmage and he can see how this play is going to develop, and he just gets rid of the ball quickly. It's on time. It's on target. That wasn't there because of the lack of familiarity of the offense, and the offense was built not necessarily around him like it's going to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, look at the moves the Browns are making this offseason. They went in, they got Elijah Moore via trade, which I am still over the moon over that acquisition. You brought in Marquise Goodwin, a good, solid veteran receiver that's going to bring much-needed speed to the position. You have Donovan Peoples-Jones. You have Amari Cooper. You have great, really solid talent at wide receiver. I think they could still draft a guy. But also, David Njoku. You brought back Jordan Akins, who he's familiar with from Houston. This offense is going to look night and day different compared to what he came to last year. I mean, last year, this offense was built around Jacoby Brissett. And in the middle of the year, 3/4 through the year, Kevin Stefanski had to try and change this as much as he could to tailor Deshaun Watson. And it was never going to be a smooth transition. I think all of us wish that. But the reality is that's just nearly impossible to do in the midst of trying to go for a playoff spot. So, again, there's a lot to look forward to this year, and I think Deshaun Watson's emergence in showing that he is that franchise quarterback that all Browns fans have waited years to have.
Well, along those lines, one of the things you can tell, the Browns are, in essence, doubling down on him. And let's take a look at what the spending is in the wide receiver room. This is from Sharps Football. Most expensive wide receiver rooms, 2023. Rams are number one. It's in part because of Cooper Kupp. You got the Cardinals. That's D-Hop. Broncos, Raiders, Jaguars, Buccaneers. Browns are seventh on that list. Now, the Bengals aren't up there because they haven't hit second contracts. But that will give you an idea. You don't put that kind of money into a wide receiver room unless you expect to throw the football. And so you're paying a quarterback a lot of money. You're paying wide receivers a lot of money. You're going to throw the football.
Absolutely. I mean, Amari Cooper, you're looking at his cap number this year. It's going to be $23 million this year. The base salary is going to be $20 million. I'm not surprised they didn't some people thought they'd restructure his contract. I'm not surprised, just given the fact that this technically is the last year of his contract, to where he'll be a free agent. So you normally don't restructure those types of deals because then the player isn't normally happy about it. Donovan Peoples-Jones is a guy that's one to watch this offseason, Dave, because the Browns have to make a decision on him. Do they want to try and extend him this offseason before he potentially comes out and has an even better year in 2023? Does Donovan Peoples-Jones interested in that type of extension, or does he want to bet on himself for 2023? There's a lot of questions that still have to be asked about this wide receiver room, but like you mentioned, when you're putting that much money into this room, you're absolutely going to throw the football more. And even look at what the Browns might do in the draft. There's still a good possibility. I mean, they met with Tank Dell, the wide receiver out of Houston. I think they're going to meet with other wide receivers. I wouldn't be shocked if they added another guy at that position. And again, you need depth at that position, especially if you are going to go to more of a shotgun-based offense, which is what they're going to be doing with Deshaun Watson in 2023. And moving forward, though, how do the Browns and Andrew Berry handle the wide receiver room moving forward? Amari Cooper, he's going to need a new contract unless you plan on giving him another decent-sized deal, because if he performs like he did last year, you're going to have to pay Amari Cooper, again, probably $20+ million. You have Donovan Peoples-Jones, who you have to make a decision on if you're going to extend, let him play that out, potentially let him walk. And then you still have Elijah Moore, Marquise Goodwin, and David Bell. But there are questions regarding the wide receiver room moving forward that Andrew Berry is going to have to answer at some point. But, I mean, you hit it. The Browns are going to throw more in 2023. And I know we're really excited to see what he can do with all the weapons he's going to have at his disposal.
Yeah, if you have a high-priced quarterback, you go and you give him the weapons without question. Well, one of the weapons will be the same, and he will still do what he does. Take a look at Nick Chubb. We've become accustomed to this, throwing around lots and lots of weight. That hurts just looking at that. But when we say they're going to be a pass-based offense, Nick Chubb will still get his touches. He's just not going to have to deal with 8 and 9 men boxes as much. So might be fewer running plays, but I think they're going to be more efficient. And I think Nick Chubb's still going to be a big part of the offense.
Oh, absolutely. And I know Matthew Berry tweeted some things he was hearing from the combine. And one of those things was the Browns were going to give Nick Chubb the ball less in 2023. And I didn't necessarily disagree with that, but I think fans really interpreted that as in Nick Chubb's only going to get like 10 carries a game or maybe less than that. I still think Nick Chubb's going to get his touches. It might not be all through carries. It's going to be more in the passing game, I think, as well. But when you transition to a quarterback like Deshaun Watson, you're going to throw the ball more. And that's natural when you have a quarterback like that you're paying so much money to. Nick Chubb's a great football player. He's going to be 28 this year. He had over 300 carries for the first time in his career. I don't think the Browns want to hit that 300 number again because they want to try and preserve him as much as they can because we know running back shelf life in the NFL is not long. But Nick Chubb is still going to get his touches. He's still one of the best players on this offense and arguably, I would say, the best running back in the NFL. And they're going to get him the football, plain and simple. So when you have Deshaun Watson, he's going to take pressure off of the running game too, because not only in the passing game, but Deshaun Watson can also run too. I expect to see some more read options, RPOs this season. And I think they're going to incorporate Jerome Ford a little bit into that. And also, they might end up drafting a running back too, just to take some of the pressure off Nick Chubb.
Yeah, I would agree. And you know, the game plan is you get the lead and you let Nick Chubb run out the clock. That's if you could give Kevin Stefanski everything he wants, that would be it. Tyler Johnson and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Take a look at some free agents that still are out there that might interest the Browns. Sports for CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
The Great Lakes Collectors Convention, presented by Greenie Sports Cards, takes over the Fieldhouse in Independence, Ohio, where the passions of sports fans, collectors, and sports talk enthusiasts collide. 50,000 square feet of ball card bliss. Hundreds of display tables. Card Shop Live Theater with interactive appearances from the region's most notable sports media. Great cards, great location, great show. Tickets on sale now at greeniesportscards.com.
We continue talking Browns with Tyler Johnson from Faithful Dawgs podcast as well as Network 216. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason for the first time today.
Last week, you were talking a little bit about what Deshaun Watson's expectations are for this year. Well, from a fan perspective, the expectations are this. We all thought that Mayfield was a mediocre quarterback. I agreed to it at some point. But that mediocre quarterback in the first year with Stefanski was 11-5, playoffs, and a playoff win. That is the low bar that Deshaun Watson and Stefanski must meet this year. Now, Watson's already had 6 practice games with Stefanski, so there is really no excuse for other than that. But that is at least the low bar that he's got to meet. You know what? His contract pays him more than Patrick Mahomes, then you got to beat Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. Not just in the regular season, but you got to beat him in the playoffs because that is what you get paid to do, and that's why you were brought here. Thank you.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Yeah, I mean, Tyler, that's the bar. Absolutely, that's why you go out and get an elite quarterback. So in the fourth quarter, you can give him the ball and say, go win the game.
Yeah, and that is why you saw the Browns go after Deshaun Watson like they did when they saw Joe Burrow, Pat Mahomes battling. You saw Pat Mahomes battling Josh Allen. The Browns knew they needed to go out and get a quarterback that could compete at that level, which is why they went out and got Deshaun Watson. And I absolutely agree with that caller. That should be the expectation. The Browns should be able to go out and beat Pat Mahomes, beat Josh Allen. That's what you paid Deshaun Watson to do. But also on top of that, you need the roster, the overall roster to do that too. I mean, Deshaun Watson, we saw in 2020, phenomenal year, best year of his career statistically. The Texans won 4 games because the roster around the rest of the team wasn't good. And that's not the situation the Browns are in. But absolutely, and the Browns need to make the playoffs this year for sure. And you could make the argument they need to be contending for a Super Bowl title. But first step is making the playoffs. And I absolutely think that is the minimum expectation for Deshaun Watson this year.
All right. Free agency still going on. Bargain shopping. 3 free agents that the Browns could steal or could still strike a deal with. This from Dog Pound Daily. Number 3, a running back, Jerick McKinnon, a guy that is a pass catcher, has played well, played with the Chiefs. Number 2, Matt Ioannidis, defensive lineman. And number 1, Eric Rowe, a safety. Of those, Ioannidis makes some sense. If you can get McKinnon at a good deal, McKinnon's a guy that catches the ball really well. He would be an interesting addition if you can get him a couple million.
Yeah, Dave. So what's so funny is two of those guys on that list are two guys that I have been clamoring for throughout free agency. First off, Matt Ioannidis, he is a guy that can play at defensive end and defensive tackle. So he has that inside-out versatility that we know the Browns like to look for in players that they sign or look to sign. He would be a great fit for what they're looking for. It's been so odd on his front. I have not heard a single thing about him. I know he was with the Panthers. He battled some injury there. I haven't heard if he's visiting anywhere. I haven't heard he's had contact with anyone. It's been really quiet on his side. And same with Jerick McKinnon. I mean, Jerick McKinnon is a guy that, like you said, pass catching back, which is exactly what the Browns need. And yeah, he's a little bit older. He's going to be 31 this year, but you need him to occasionally spell Nick Chubb. He can do that. He had 73 carries this past year, so you don't need him to carry the load for you. But what you need him to do is catch the football. 513 receiving yards, 9 receiving touchdowns this year. Exactly what the Browns need in the passing game at running back. And I said this. I said the Browns need a pass-catching back. That's what they need. And this isn't a slight to Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb can absolutely catch the football. But when you have a guy like Jerick McKinnon or even some of the rookies in this draft they could bring in, you have someone that you can line up in the backfield, and another team's going to put a linebacker on them, and that person is going to be nearly impossible to cover. So you know what? That's why the Browns need a Jerick McKinnon or someone in the draft that can take that pressure in the passing game and give Deshaun Watson another outlet to just make this offense completely unguardable.
Yep, you get somebody like that, and those are the cheap yards we keep talking about, easy yards. Don't make them difficult. Get the easy yards when you can get them. Ian Rappaport tweets out that a guy that played for the Browns, Deion Jones, is meeting with the Giants. So it'll be interesting to see if he signs there. It was a long shot that the Browns were going to bring him back as it was, because he's a little bit of a veteran who was probably looking for more money.
Yeah, Deion Jones, the situation that worked out with him is the Browns obviously did trade for him. But when Andrew Berry traded for him, they basically voided the last year of his contract. That way it would let Deion Jones explore free agency. So I think the writing was on the wall that even at the time, that's what he was going to look to do. But I don't know if the Browns are going to consider bringing him back. He just didn't perform that well for him. 48 overall grade, 39 grade in run defense, and coverage he was a 54.4. He didn't do much for the team. 29 tackles this year, 3 sacks. But again, nothing really stood out with him on the field. If they bring him back, they could still look to do that. But I think the writing was on the wall when they traded for him and redid his contract that he was probably going to end up leaving in free agency after the season.
All right, before we go to break, this again from Dog Pound Daily. 3 new problem players in the AFC North. Number 3, Nelson Aguilar, wide receiver for the Baltimore Ravens. Number 2, Irv Smith Jr., tight end for the Cincinnati Bengals. And number 1, Orlando Brown, left tackle for the Bengals. When you look at those, left tackle is a spot. Bengals need to invest heavily in protecting Joe Burrow. I would.
Yeah, the Orlando Brown signing that the Bengals got is really a good deal for them. Orlando Brown really messed up his value when he didn't agree to the contract extension the Chiefs were offering him that would have paid him more money in a longer-term deal. So I'm not sure who advised him on that one. But Cincinnati gets a really solid left tackle there for Joe Burrow. It does cause them problems with Jonah Williams, who now has demanded a trade because they're trying to move him to right tackle, and he does not want to do that. So problem for them there. I think Irv Smith Jr. is another underrated addition for the Bengals because this is a guy that's never really broke out. He's always been a really athletic tight end coming out of Alabama, battled some injury. But to get him on a cheap signing like that, the Bengals are also probably going to draft a tight end in a really loaded class. The name that's a little funny is Nelson Aguilar because if you're trying to entice Lamar Jackson to stay and your answer is bringing Nelson Aguilar,
yeah,
I don't think he's going to be too thrilled about that one.
Now, he wants a number 1. And again, Nelson Aguilar's professional NFL quality wide receiver. 3, a 4, somebody that, you know, he's going to catch the ball, but he's not a weapon that's going to entice me to run right back to the huddle of the Ravens if I'm Lamar Jackson.
Yeah. Me too. I mean, again, curious to see what happens with that situation, but if you're trying to convince your star quarterback to come back or rescind his trade request, first off, you pay him the money that, frankly, he does deserve for all he's done for your franchise and playoff wins he's led you to. But also, you got to build that offense to bring more talent around him. I mean, hey, not that us Browns fans are hating what we're seeing that's going on in Baltimore, I'll tell you that.
Well, you do have Mark Andrews, but, yeah, you got to give him something a little bit more at the wide receiver position. Tyler Johnson and I are going to step aside, take another timeout, other side of the break. We'll turn our attention to the NFL draft. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Tyler Johnson from the Faithful Dawgs podcast as well as Network 216. So this is from NFL.com. Draft needs for every NFL team. For the Browns, they say defensive end, linebacker, and running back. Defense still needs to be bolstered, but don't forget running back. Nick Chubb is sneaking up on his deal ending after the 2024 season. I think all those are very valid. The edge rusher concerns me. I like what they did, but you still have Alex Wright is young. Isaiah Thomas is young. I like Okunrankwo. You know what you're getting from Myles Garrett, but yeah, you need something else there.
Pass rusher, I still see them adding a veteran like a Melvin Ingram or Justin Houston. I don't think that's going to be until later. They just want to see what happens in the draft, possibly who they can add. I just see them going that route, at least at defensive end. How they address the rest of the defensive line is going to be really interesting because you already have a defensive tackle. You brought in Dalvin Tomlinson, Tristan Hill, Maurice Hurst. You brought those guys in, but you still need more bodies there too. Do they really want to add another rookie to a really young defensive tackle room? Or do you want to go in and add a veteran? Because there, like we've talked about, Dave, there are other veteran D tackles that could still be options out there. As far as the needs that they mentioned, running back is absolutely a sleeper for the Browns because, again, we don't like to talk about it. We never do. But at some point, the Browns will have to make a decision on Nick Chubb, especially with him being 28 years old now. Going into 2024, he'll be 29. You look at his contract, and Andrew Berry structured it very favorably for the team, for them to be able to be flexible there. There are plenty of running back options the Browns could be interested in. The first one for me, if you're looking at just a pass catching back, and I'm talking like a guy that's really going to affect the passing game and kind of be that third down go-to back, Deuce Vaughn out of Kansas State intrigues me, and I've heard a lot of people concerned about his size, and it's rightfully so. He's 5'5", 179 pounds. But the thing that I'm not concerned about, I see the production. And if you look at his production throughout his time at Kansas State, he has been over 1,300 yards in 2021 and 2022, averaging over that time nearly 6 yards a carry, 18 touchdowns in 2021, 9 in 2022, but also receptions, nearly 50 receptions those 2 years. And they're just highlights of him just making linebackers miss running routes. And that's exactly, we talked about with Jerick McKinnon. He would fill that role for the Browns as that third down back. Now, if you're looking at a guy, like for sure, could be a potential Nick Chubb replacement down the line. Two guys stand out. Rashawn Johnson coming out of Texas, 22 years old. Always in Bijan Robinson's shadow has been the biggest thing with him. I mean, if he would have transferred, he probably starts anywhere else. His stats don't blow you away. 500 yards the last 2 years, 5 touchdowns each of those years, nearly 6 yards a carry. He also has shown he can catch the ball out of the backfield, 128 receiving yards this past year. He's a really good athlete, and I think he's someone the Browns really like to add a power back at the position, 6 foot, 219 pounds. And the final guy is Zach Evans out of Ole Miss, the TCU transfer, former 5-star running back, 22 years old, 5'11", 202 pounds there. And another guy that just produces when he's on the field. I mean, at TCU, my apologies, he had 648 yards, 5 touchdowns in 2021. And then 2022, 930 yards and 9 touchdowns for Ole Miss. They rotated backs a lot, TCU and Ole Miss. But former 5-star, we know Andrew Berry, that really sticks out to him. He likes finding those former 5-star and higher level recruits when drafting players. So those are some names I would watch, because I do believe the Browns are going to add a running back to this room, because right now you have Nick Chubb, Jerome Ford, and John Kelly. You need another body in there.
All right, let me throw a name out to you that I like, that I've talked about a couple of times. Tajay Spears is a guy, and as you do these draft simulations, he's popping up as being available late in the 4th round, 5th round. That's a guy that you watch him and he just stands out. There's something about him. There's acceleration. There's burst. I don't know how durable. There might be a durability question. That's why he might not be in the first 3 rounds. That's a guy late in the draft I think would be an intriguing guy to take a chance on.
Yeah, Tajay Spears is someone that I've looked at too, and I would love for him to be there if he is there in the Browns are drafted, because I don't think the Browns are drafting a running back on day 2. I think if they're going to take a guy, it's going to be on day 3 of the draft. If he is there, he would be a home run pick. I mean, you mentioned it. He had a 90.2 overall grade this year, hit nearly 1,600 yards, nearly 7 yards per attempt, 19 touchdowns. He also had 22 catches for 251 yards. Rushing grade of 90.6. He can also run in the zone, which is what Kevin Stefanski loves to do, at 73.4. Between the tackles and 93.4. His elusive ratings of 145.8, which is all these, by the way, are elite except his zone grade, which is still very good. And then yards after contact, 4.5 yards after contact. So you don't have to talk me into him. I would love it. And just one more stat on him. He actually had over 1,000 yards after contact this year.
All right. What about wide receivers you think the Browns might be interested? You kind of ran through some of the running backs. Wide receiver, probably an area they're going to add a young guy. Who are some of the names you listen out for that you think the Browns might be interested in wide receiver-wise?
I like Parker Washington coming out of Penn State, a guy that doesn't blow you away statistically. He has played he's played a lot of his snaps in the slot, but he also has shown that from time to time he can line up out wide if need be. 76.4 overall grade. He only had 611 yards receiving this year. Penn State was not the best team throwing the football, so I do keep that in mind with this. I mean, two touchdowns this year, 76.7 overall grade, 73.8 grade against man coverage, which is elite, and a 71.4 contested catch rate, which was also elite. And he's only 5'10" and 204 pounds. So the fact that at that size, he is elite at contested catches is really intriguing to me. I love Marvin Mims, too, coming out of Oklahoma. The biggest knock on Marvin Mims, though, is his route running. He did not run a very versatile route tree at Oklahoma. A lot of just straight up streaks down the field. So he had over 1,000 yards this year, 6 touchdowns. He can line up wide, play in the slot, but the biggest thing you have to ask yourself with him, and if you're Andrew Berry, the question with Anthony Schwartz coming out was his route running. The question with Marvin Mims coming out is his route running. But Marvin Mims has a track record of being already a very solid football player, with Anthony Schwartz not having that type of overall experience, but 4.3 speed, 5'11", 183 pounds. And then one final guy, if you're looking for a different profile type of wide receiver, and that is Cedric Tillman coming out of Tennessee. Little overshadowed by his teammate Jalen Hyatt, who was the top receiver in college football this year. He's going to be 23 years old, 6'3", 213 pounds, so a bigger receiver. He's 4.5 speed, which is very good for his size. Played the majority of his snaps out wide, not many in the slot, but he has shown an ability to really be able to separate pretty well. 70 receiving grade this past year. 42.9% contested catch rate, which is still very solid. 65.2 against man coverage. a guy I would look at if I'm the Browns. If you're looking for that different type of profile at receiver, Cedric Tillman would be that guy that would really stand out to you as that bigger body guy.
Tyler Johnson from the Faithful Dogs Podcast as well as Network 216 and I are going to take one more time out. We'll talk a little draft and look a little bit ahead to what the Browns might be doing win total-wise. Sports for CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Tyler Johnson from the Faithful Dogs Podcast as well as Network 216. This from Dog Pound Daily. 5 prospects the Browns should trade up for in the upcoming 2023 draft. Keanu Benton, defensive tackle from Wisconsin, number 1. Darnell Washington, tight end from Georgia, number 2. Jack Campbell, linebacker from Iowa. Josh Downs, wide receiver from North Carolina. And Derek Hall, edge rusher from Auburn. Tyler, of those guys, which ones would you be willing to trade up to get?
For me, Dave, I would go up and get Jack Campbell, the linebacker out of Iowa. He addresses a need for the Browns first and foremost, and I think we talked about the linebacker position earlier in the show. Jack Campbell was a 91.9 grade this year on PFF, 6'5", 249 pounds. 4.6 speed at the position. He is a bigger linebacker. His change of direction was insane. I mean, he had a 6.74 three-cone drill and a 4.24 shuttle. He is exactly what you're looking for as a middle linebacker, and the Browns do not have that plan in place. I mean, Anthony Walker, again, is coming off a serious injury. Jacob Phillips, he could be on the bubble. I mean, again, given his injury history, given the fact that if they cut him, it doesn't really affect their cap space that much. If you go out and get a guy like Jack Campbell, this could be your linebacker, starting linebacker in the middle for the next 4 years. And again, he's elite at pretty much everything you look at. Coverage grade, 92.9. Run defense grade, an 87. Missed tackle rate, 8.9%, which is elite in that regard. I mean, he is just a fantastic overall football player. And again, we saw the Browns trade up for Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah a couple years ago. Similar thing could be said for Jack Campbell. If he is there, I expect the Browns to try and trade up for him. It would make a lot of sense and fill a need for the team. Yeah,
freakish size too, 6'5", but he's 6'5" and he can run. I mean, we have seen, we've done some video breakdown on a really talented athlete. All right, this is from Summer Sports. How the betting market forecasts teams from 2022-2023. So using win totals, this is provided by DraftKings. Browns win percentage in 2022, just above 40%. Projected win total for 2023, 9 games. And you see a lot of math went into the graph, but what it tells you is they're projecting the Browns to win 9 games. I think there's some factors that don't go into that. Browns lost some games they probably shouldn't have with catastrophic collapses. If they don't win 10 or 11, I think it's a disappointing year, unless there's more catastrophic injuries.
Yeah, the 9 win total, I think, is their safe bet in that regard. I think, for me, I think it's early still, but 10, 11 games is exactly, like you said, what I believe they should be winning this year. I mean, if you look at their home schedule, they're going to obviously have the Ravens, Bengals, and Steelers at home. You have the Cardinals coming. Their new coaching staff, they're in a rebuild. The Bears are still in a rebuild. Jacksonville, the Jets, 49ers, Titans. The Titans are kind of in a rough situation. But then when you go on the road, Broncos, Texans, Colts. The Broncos, obviously a new head coach. But the Texans and Colts, both rebuilding teams. The schedule is very favorable for the Browns to win 10 or 11 games. And the way this is all set up, they are in a good position to contend in the AFC North, and it seriously would not shock me, depending on the rest of the additions they make this offseason, if the Browns end up winning the AFC North. Again, health plays into that a lot, but the Browns on paper are going to have this year a top 10 roster in terms of talent. And if Kevin Stefanski can deliver and Deshaun Watson plays like we believe he will, the Browns have a good chance of not only making the playoffs, but winning an AFC North title.
Yep, and that's with the Bengals, who I think are really good in that division. I agree with you. All right, before I let you go, this is from the Bleacher Report. Ranking the biggest draft mistakes the past 10 years. Number one, they've got Mitch Trubisky from Chicago. He was taken number 2 overall. Second biggest one, Johnny Manziel by the Browns in 2014. Third was Robert Aguayo. That was a kicker that was taken in like the second round by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And number 4 is Justin Gilbert. So you have 2 of the 4 biggest mistakes in the same draft for the Browns. That will put you back a few years.
Yeah, we can't help but laugh at it now. But I remember at the time, everyone was so ecstatic that we got Johnny Manziel. I mean, I was pumped that we got him too. I couldn't believe it because, I mean, you saw what he did in college and like, oh, this is going to be so much fun in the NFL. And yeah, seeing 2 of those names on the list, especially Justin Gilbert too, you really forget about Justin Gilbert because he was a corner you took really early in the draft before Manziel, of course. And we didn't hear a single thing as far as anything he really accomplished with the Browns. You heard more about Manziel because 1, he's the quarterback, and 2, he was in the news all the time for partying and having all the issues that he had. But it's kind of funny that now we can look back on that list and laugh. But Johnny Manziel, to me, you can make the argument Johnny Manziel should be number 1 on that list. Yeah. Just with all the hype that came around him as a prospect and as a player. I mean, texting the Browns to come get me I'll never forget that.
Yeah, and Gilbert, that was like a top 10 pick. So yeah, that's. Let's hope there are no more of those for the next. We've had enough for 10 years. Let's try to stay off that list for 10 years. Tyler Johnson, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Tyler.
Yep, thanks, Dave. Really appreciate it.
All right, Tyler Johnson, make sure you check him out, Faithful Dawgs podcast as well as Network 216. We're taking a quick time out. We turn our attention to the Cavaliers. Sam Amico from hoopswire.com straight ahead. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
The Great Lakes Collectors Convention, presented by Greeny Sports Cards, takes over the Fieldhouse in Independence, Ohio, where the passions of sports fans, collectors, and sports talk enthusiasts collide. 50,000 square feet of ball card bliss. Hundreds of display tables. Card Shop Live Theater with interactive appearances from the region's most notable sports media. Great cards, great location, great show. Tickets on sale now at greenysportscards.com.
Sports4CLE continues. We turn our attention to the Cavaliers. A comeback again. Bad news is they fell down to the Pacers last night. Good news is they came back and won. J.B. Bickerstaff talked about that win over the Pacers and what he saw.
We picked our spot and just locked in. Again, we know what we're capable of. My quest is for the consistency of it all. But again, the guys know they have a place they can go when they need to, and we did that tonight in the 4th.
There have been multiple games where that's been the case, where they've been able to flip that switch, especially defensively. I know, like you just said, the consistency factor, but what does it show that in those moments so that they can go there and they've been able to consistently do that in games?
Again, it's the confidence that they have in each other. It's the confidence that they have in their ability as a group. And then the will and determination to take those challenges. So it says a lot about, their commitment to each other, what they want to do for one another, and how they support each other.
With that, let's welcome in Sam Amico from hoopswire.com. Sam, when you look at it, I understand what he's saying. Boy, I'd like to have a little more defense a little bit more regularly.
Yeah, it's probably kind of human nature a little bit when you're playing a Pacers team that's not going to the playoffs, that's been struggling lately, and that was without two starters in Tyrese Halliburton and Miles Turner. I just think you watch that game, through the first 2.5 quarters or so, and you could just see the Cavs were kind of going through the motions a little bit, particularly defensively. And I think they knew that if they turned it on when they did, they would get that result, which was, yeah, we're going to beat this team by 8 or 10 points. Probably could have beat them by 30. But I think at this point in the season, Dave, it's probably, it'd be nice if the Cavs could get that 4th seed locked in, which they should be able to do, within these final 3 games pretty quickly, and then get to rest, or at least, take some time off before the playoffs get here, simply because they're all but officially locked into 4th. So it'd be nice if they can officially do it. And it's just hard to stay with it mentally as you're waiting for the playoffs to start.
Yeah, that's fair. Again, it's a little concerning, but it's fair. Take a look at this. This is interesting as well. Bleacher Report. Last 3 games for Donovan Mitchell. 44 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. 42 points, 5 assists. 16 to 23 from the field. 40 points, 6 rebounds, 14 of 24 from the field. So Donovan Mitchell becomes the first Cavs player in history to record 40-plus points in 3 straight games, getting ready for the playoffs. And that's not a surprise, Sam. He's probably been better than most people thought he would. He's been really good, and people knew he was really good. Not quite sure we knew he was this good.
Yeah, I don't think the Cavs knew he was this good when they made the trade, so they're even more pleasantly surprised than they expected to be. He's been masterful all season, is saving some of his best individual stuff, obviously, for now in terms of scoring the ball. What I don't like about those 3 straight 40-point games to find the Cavs is the Cavs were 1-2 in those games and didn't play very well in the third one that they won against the Pacers. So that's not on Mitchell. That's kind of on, the rest of the guys kind of got to step up so that he doesn't feel it necessary to, have a 40-plus point game in order for them to have a shot at winning. Because as we've seen in those 3 games, it hasn't gone very well as a team. So, those are both show that his brilliance offensively, but it also is a little bit concerning as you head into the playoffs, where you're going to need more than Mitchell and Garland and Mobley to carry that load, particularly when you're in a playoff series. So brilliance on his part, but not necessarily something you want to see or that probably is going to work long term.
Yeah, the other thing about it is those 40 points, and we kind of got into it, 23 field goal attempts, 24 field goal attempts in 2 of those. So it's coming within the flow. It's not like he's forcing it. And he just seems to – he's one of those guys where, he plays within the flow of the offense. You look up and he's got 25 or 30 points.
Yeah, and he makes it seem so, like you said, he makes it seem so seamless in the fact that, he very rarely forces anything unless it's at the end of a shot clock. And he seems to be able to, okay, we need a basket, I'll go get us one. And he doesn't just settle for a 30-point or 30-foot three-pointer. He drives to the basket, tries to create, and is usually pretty successful. So, yeah, he's been on top of being a brilliant scorer and finisher. He's been a fantastic leader and teammate.
So this is also an interesting note. The Cavs improved to 49-30. So they get one of these last 3. They're going to have 50 wins. 31-9 at home. That's again among the best in the league. After the win over the Pacers, 115-105. It was Cleveland's 16th win when trailing by 10-plus points. It's also their NBA best 32nd win by double figures. Both of those things are kind of mind-numbing when you think about it. They've come from double digits behind 16 times, and they've won by double digits 32 times. I think it's a statement that when they play defense, even in spurts, they're really hard to beat.
Yeah, those two stats came to life in one game. They were down double digits against the Pacers, and they beat them by double digits. So it does, and it shows. That's really where their bread and butter is. As great as Mitchell has been, as good as Garland has been, and as much improvement as Mobley has shown, they really hang their hat on the defensive end, and a lot of that starts with Jared Allen and Mobley. The fact that those two guys are so good at protecting the rim, and just when they're not blocking shots, they're altering shots, they're getting rebounds, just so active near the basket, which really disrupts everything an opposing team is trying to do. Yes, we live in the era of the three-point shot, but the other option that opposing teams and any team wants to see their players going to the basket when the three-pointers aren't falling. So Mobley, Allen really start there with the defense and keeping other teams from or forcing other teams to think twice about going to the hoop. So that's why you're seeing these big swings coming back from 10-point deficits because the Cavs really just kind of turn it up defensively and make things more difficult for the opponent, particularly when it comes to scoring near the hoop. And that really disrupts everything the opponent's trying to do.
So you saw Jared Allen come back. He'd missed a couple due to a groin injury. It seems like they're limiting his minutes. Let's talk about his health. And then Isaac Okoro, kind of a balky knee. So how much would they – and again, they're not certain he's going to be able to go. They think he'll be okay during the playoffs. How much do you think they miss Okoro, and how careful are you going to be with Jared Allen getting into that first series?
Yeah, with Okoro, obviously you're going to miss his energy, his defense. He does a lot of things that, obviously you don't need the basketball to help the team win, and that's where Okoro comes in. He's been invaluable as kind of that hustle player, wing defender, and guy who can, surprisingly score if you leave him alone. So they do miss that element of it. I thought they missed that element quite a bit when they lost to the Knicks the other night, and you saw Jalen Brunson do whatever he wanted in that game. As far as Allen, again, you want to get some of these games so that you can take some time off and lock in that fourth seed and get him rested and ready for the first round.
Sam Amico from hoopswire.com and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, are the Cavs ready for the playoffs? We'll dive into that. Sports for CLE, we'll be right back talking Cavs. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Cavs with Sam Amico from hoopswire.com. Cavs wrapping up the regular season. Sam, do you think they're ready? Are the Cavs ready for the playoffs, do you think? And I know you've written an article about this, so I'm teeing you up there.
Yeah. I think that that's a good question. I think that they are. There's probably been a little bit. Look, they lost to Atlanta, and Atlanta barely on a game they had a shot to win. I don't think that that's a big deal. So really, if you look, the past probably month, they've had one bad loss, and that was to the Knicks at home. They didn't have Allen, they didn't have Okoro, and we just got done talking about defense, and those two really factor in on that end. So again, you call it a bad loss at home to a team that you're probably going to face in the first round, but at the same time, the Cavs have pretty much locked themselves in the 4th seed, and even though it's not official yet, they know that's where they're going to end up, unless they really blow it here in these final 3 games, which I doubt they do. So I think that, they're ready for the playoffs, and I think they're ready for the playoffs in more ways than one. And by that, I mean, maybe mentally, they just need to get to the playoffs so that they can get recharged a little bit here, because right now they're just trying to play out the string and get this over with, injury free.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. It makes sense. They know where they're going to be. These games are kind of formalities. You got to do them. Along those lines, though, let's take a look. NBA Power Rankings, CBSSports.com. So they have the Celtics 1, the Bucks 2, Nuggets 3, Sixers 4. They have the Knicks checking in at 5 this week. Suns, Grizzlies, the Cavs at 8. Cavs lost to the Hawks and Knicks without Julius Randle to start the week before letting the depleted Pacers hang around a little too long in an eventual win on Sunday, which was yesterday. We've talked about this a little bit. I guess, Sam, the thing that concerns me against the Knicks, the Cavs kind of played at their pace. In other words, you let them run up and down the court, and if you make Jalen Brunson, if you don't let him do that, he's not nearly as good.
Yeah, right. If ideally you want to keep him in kind of a half-court, slow-down, grind-it-out type of game, which is what the Cavaliers, that's that defense, that playoff-style defense is really their calling card. And I don't know. I think the Knicks obviously were very determined to make a statement in that game, and the Cavs were considerably less determined and just did not finish the job. Or when you're talking about stepping up defensively like they did against the Pacers and even the Hawks in Atlanta, just never flipped that switch against the Knicks. Again, you can't read too much into a regular season game when the Cavs were down 2 starters, but I think going into the playoffs, you can say the Cavs are better than the Knicks, but they're not that much better. So they have to play at the top of their game if they do face the Knicks in a first round series, or that could be trouble.
How tough is it, do you think, for guys like Mitchell, like Garland, even like Evan Mobley? They want to get out and run. It's human nature. That's not the recipe to beating a team like the Knicks, though. And is that kind of one of the dynamics that JB Bickerstaff has to balance?
Yeah, you want to be able to run and fast break and when those opportunities present themselves, but you don't want to force it. Sometimes as a young guard, Garland might force it sometimes, not very often. But yeah, those are kind of the minor details that you want to work on is pace when you're in a playoff series. Because again, if you're the Cavs, you're going to advance because of your defense. So when you are playing defense well, fast break opportunities will present themselves. You won't have to force it, and they've shown that all season long. For the most part, they're pretty under control and play it smart, don't force things. So they just have to stick to their good habits once the playoffs do get here, and that's running when the opportunity is there, but not forcing it and not taking shots early in the shot clock that aren't there.
Fair to say that's one of the things young teams tend to have to learn in playoff basketball is kind of, everything's dictated by situation, time, and circumstance in the game.
Yeah, that's for sure. A young team is going to have some adjustments. Playoff basketball is different basketball than the regular season. It's not a ton different, but there are enough differences that a younger team with a younger core like the Cavs, they have to adjust to that. They have to adjust on the fly. So yeah, a lot of different situations. Again, the refs kind of let you get away with more defensively. There's just every game, even though it's a 7-game series, every game is like an NCAA tournament game because you can give yourself a distinct edge or a distinct advantage or turn the series on a dime with one game. So those are lessons that they're going to be learning along the way. And if you're the Cavs and a Cavs fan, you're hoping that they're winning some of those games while they're learning those playoff lessons. Because the nice thing is the Knicks weren't in the playoffs last year either. So if they do face the Knicks, which it seems like they're gonna, the Knicks are going to be in a very similar boat. While their core is a little older as far as age, they don't have a ton more playoff experience. And just like Mitchell is new to the Cavs, Brunson is new to the Knicks. So I would think that would also work to the Cavs' advantage a little bit should they face New York.
All right, before I let you go, I know, again, you've written or you've tweeted about this, Evan Mobley. What do you, second year, still he is young. Remember, just 1 year of college basketball. What have you seen from Evan Mobley, and what do you think the ceiling is for him?
At the start of last season, the first probably 3 months, I just thought this guy looks like the next Garnett or Chris Bosh or Tim Duncan, that kind of power forward. He has a game all of his own, but he's the kind of power forward to me who looked like a guy who was going to, help change the course of the franchise. Then I think he hit a little bit of a rookie wall, never really bounced back from that after the All-Star break last season. And then this year he had to adjust to not only, he already had Darius Garland, but to add Donovan Mitchell to the mix, two dynamic ball-handling, ball-dominant guards. I think that impacted Mobley a little bit. But I'll say this, Dave, since the All-Star break and probably a few weeks before, he's been playing his best basketball as a pro. And I think, a lot of that is the difference he's made defensively. He just looks so much more comfortable offensively. He's back to the point where he never gets wrapped, and I think that's a huge thing. With somebody as talented as he is, it's all mindset. And his mind is very clearly on the basketball court in a very good place. He's playing with great confidence. He's making good decisions. He's not forcing anything. And I go back to what I thought the first 3 months of his career is that, eventually this guy could be your 1A next to Mitchell. And he's probably not far from that now. I think both Mobley and Garland are 1As to Mitchell's number 1. So I think the sky's the limit for him. And he could go down, in NBA lore as a Tim Duncan, Kevin Garnett, Chris Bosh type when it comes to impact.
Have you noticed the offensive end? He wants the ball now. I don't think you could. It's not that he didn't want the ball earlier in the year. Now he wants the ball and has a plan of how he's going to attack the opponent.
Right. Yeah. I think in the early part of the season, again, it was kind of adjusting to Mitchell. If you're Donovan Mitchell's teammate, especially a young teammate, you're probably out there thinking, well, this guy can score whenever he wants. What am I going to contribute? So I think that at some point, Evan Mobley realized, okay, here's where I can fit in, demanding the basketball. I saw a play yesterday against the Pacers where Mobley was posted up and Mitchell looked at him and said, yeah, it's yours. Go do your thing. And Mobley got the ball from Mitchell and went and scored a bucket. So I think that there's some chemistry there. There already was with Garland, and now there is with Mitchell, and I think that's really helped him. And Mobley really has been fortunate to have Jared Allen around too, and helping in his development. So I just think a lot of things have been at play, and it's really been beneficial to not just Mobley, but there's a reason the Cavs have, won 10 of 14 at the most crucial part of the season.
Sam Amico, hoopswire.com, as always. Great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Sam.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and we will talk to you soon, I'm sure.
Sam Amico, hoopswire.com. Make sure you check him out. NBA playoffs closing in. Great stuff on the Cavs and everything NBA. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.